Hey guys, DBWhatIfs. Back again with a new What If. I'm very curious on how this one will turn out. Thanks to your guys' response to my poll, what if Android 1 wasn't a failure was chosen to be the next What If I make. This will be my first attempt at creating a What If, where it doesn't necessarily follow the linear path of Dragon Ball at first. It starts in age 740, 9 whole years before Goku and Bulma meet. Let's get this What If started. Inside of a dark laboratory, a 40-year-old Dr.Gero is seen tinkering on a lifeless machine when another scientist walks over and asks, "Do you really think Commander Red's funding for this little experiment of yours is well-founded?" Dr.Gero grits his teeth and says, "We can only hope. Flip that switch over there for me." The man does as he is asked and flips a switch, causing a surge of electricity to surge into a cylindrical container. Gas is expelled shortly after, as the door to the cylindrical container opens. The gas slowly began to clear, as a short, copper robotic creature stepped out of the container. The assistant asked with a hint of fear in his voice, What is that?" Dr.Gero smiles and says, "This is an android. It can serve the Red Ribbon Army. This is what Commander Red wants, disposable soldiers. We can make copies of him." The assistant stares in disbelief at the creature before him, before asking, "Does it speak?" Dr.Gero clears his throat, then says, "Android 001. What is your program?" The android stares at Dr.Gero before a metallic voice rings out, "To fight, to serve, to protect, all for the Red Ribbon Army." Dr.Gero smiles and says, "Look at that. Let's do a little test run." Dr.Gero then pushed a button on a small remote, summoning 3 small red ribbon robots. The robots then aimlessly march over to Android 001. Android 001 spoke metallically once more. "Threat detected. Identify yourself." The Red Ribbon Army robots ignored the demand for their identification and began firing lasers at Android 001. Android 001 then said, "Identification unnecessary. Threat detected." Android 001 then charged over at the Red Ribbon Army robots and punched a hole straight through the center of one, causing it to fall to the ground with a tiny explosion. The other 2 Red Ribbon Army robots try to surround Android 001, but Android 001's hands flip backwards, revealing 2 hollow holes starting from his wrist and going into his arms. Android 001 then spoke again. Flamethrower activated. Fire was quickly expelled from Android 001's arms, melting the Red Ribbon Army robots where they stood. Dr.Gero clapped loudly and said, "Well done, Android 001. What a mouthful for your name. We'll shorten it to Android 1 for now." Android 1 slowly turned his body to face Dr.Gero and said in a monotone manner, "Thank you, Doctor." The assistant then asked, "So, he's made of copper, but can withstand fire that can melt metal?" Dr.Gero groaned and said, "He's made of a different type of copper alloy." The assistant, still looking confused, looked over at Android 1 and then asked, "An army of this guy? How strong is he really?" Dr.Gero flipped through his notebook and said, "He can probably take down a tank all by himself. He's a mobile talking tank killer, that's for sure." The assistant chuckles, then asks, "Should I call Commander Red down here to see your fine work?" Dr.Gero snarled and said, "So what? He can take my blueprints and dispose of me? I think we should take this day by day, overcomplicating Android 1. Ensure none can defeat him. Ensure that no one can replicate his design, guaranteeing longevity in terms of my life." The assistant, seemingly overwhelmed, simply smiled and nodded once more. A couple of years have passed and we're now at age 743. Dr.Gero had been tasked to show off a completed form of Android 1 to Commander Red. Commander Red stood in front of Android 1's cylindrical seal chamber, awaiting Dr.Gero to open it. The door slowly opened as Android 1 walked out more smoothly than we had seen prior. Commander Red smirked and said, "It's so strong-looking, and it's pretty tall, isn't it?" An assistant nearby spoke up and said, "Actually, Android 1 was designed to be rather short in order to access smaller areas." Commander Red grimaced for a moment and simply fired his weapon at the assistant, causing them to fall over, writhing in pain. Dr. Gero didn't seem fazed as he gestured to his creation. Commander Red walked over and closely inspected it before asking, "Is it safe?" Android 1 still spoke metallically. "Affirmative. I was designed to aid and abet the Red Ribbon Army. I am Android 1. I come equipped with rockets, bullets, flamethrower extensions. My body is durable. My programming is fine-tuned. Please allow me to demonstrate the depths of my power that the doctor has bestowed upon me." Commander Red smiled and said, "That won't be necessary. Doctor, I am impressed. Not only can it walk and talk, but it is almost seemingly self-aware about its purpose. Serving the Great Red Ribbon Army, seizing the world, that is our goal." Dr. Gero smiled, then said, "Of course. I can assure you, though, that this machine is quite complex. This is the final version of him. I plan on making hundreds, if not thousands, to help take over the world in your honor, Commander. I plan on giving Android 1 a shared memory access bank over a stringed network. Therefore, he can theoretically share memories, tactics, and ideas with the other copies of him." Commander Red waved a dismissive hand and said, Right. Well, get to work. I've got a meeting to attend to." Dr. Gero smiled and waved Commander Red off as he turned back over to Android 1 and said, "That went well. You'll be the pinnacle of the Red Ribbon Army soon enough." Android 1 stared back blankly. 7 years have now passed as it is now, age 750. Inside of Dr. Gero's laboratory, Officer Black walks in and states, "We need 3 androids to assist with Colonel Silver's search for one of the Dragon Balls." Dr. Gero smiles and says, "Surprised you want that many. One would be more than sufficient." Officer Black continues looking onward at Dr. Gero. Dr. Gero then chuckled and said, "Fine. You're not hurting my stock." Behind Dr. Gero laid over 100 cylindrical containers, all holding a copy of Android 1. 3 of the containers opened up. 3 androids stepped forward, all looking identical to one another. Officer Black then states, "Send them over to Colonel Silver as he departs. Don't leave him waiting." Officer Black then takes his leave. Dr. Gero walked over and typed a string of commands on a computer in the corner. Dr. Gero then says, "Listen to Colonel Silver's commands. If asked about blueprints, data, plans, or anything labeled in your memory banks as expunged or lockdown, do not unveil unless commanded so by me." The androids stared blankly back at Dr. Gero before mechanically responding in unison, "Affirmative." The 3 androids marched over to the door and exited. Meanwhile, Colonel Silver was being briefed on the town and a rough estimated location as to where the Dragon Ball could be. The 3 androids entered the room. Colonel Silver said, "These things have been on a test run before, right?" Commander Red stood up straight and said, Yes. Now find me that Dragon Ball." Colonel Silver nodded as he took his group of soldiers and the androids to a small desert town. At the town, 2 soldiers and the 3 androids followed closely behind Colonel Silver. After searching around the town, Colonel Silver spotted a small shop with a man. It appeared to be a pawn shop of sorts. Colonel Silver then spoke curtly, "Have you seen an orange ball with red stars around these parts?" The shopkeeper rubbed his chin quizzically before stating, "Why, yes. I think I have one here in the back. Let me take a look." The man went into the back and grabbed a 4-starred Dragon Ball. The man then said, "Is this what you're looking for?" Ha, you have a good idea for rare items." Colonel Silver held it in his hand and simply stated, "Not quite," as he let the Dragon Ball fall from his hand and hit the ground, causing the Dragon Ball to shatter upon impact. Colonel Silver said, "The real Dragon Balls don't break. They're virtually indestructible to man. Now where is the real one?" Colonel Silver moved closer to the man as the man's face was wrought with worry. Colonel Silver said, I suppose time is up. Handle him." One of the soldiers aimed his weapon at the man and fired at him point blank, causing the man to succumb to his injury. Colonel Silver said, "Androids, tear this place apart. Look for the Dragon Ball." The androids said, "Affirmative." They started aggressively rummaging throughout the shop. The soldiers then went outside as the androids were searching. After a bit, Colonel Silver yelled out, "Hey, androids, torch this place to the ground. We'll find it quicker that way." The androids then began to shoot flames from their arms from the inside. The building caught fire quickly and fell apart. People in the village screamed as they ran from the burning inferno. The androids walked away from the fire as they waited for the fire to dissipate. Once the flames had burnt out, Colonel Silver commanded the androids to look through the ash for any sign of the Dragon Ball. There appeared to be nothing. A soldier walked over to Colonel Silver and said, "Sir, Commander Red is calling you on the radio, sir." Colonel Silver grabbed the radio and said, "Yes, sir?" Commander Red's voice appeared on the walkie-talkie as he said, "Silver, the Dragon Ball is being carried up north. It is no longer in the vicinity. Go due north." Colonel Silver gritted his teeth but shrugged it off and said, "Yes, sir." Colonel Silver then instructed all of his men to get into their vehicles and follow him up north. The androids climbed into the bag of a storage van owned by the Red Ribbon Army. Eventually, the Red Ribbon Army group came upon a small village. It almost looked like a festival was taking place. There was a huge mansion. Over the radio, one of the soldiers spoke up and asked, "Colonel Silver, what should we do? We know the Dragon Ball is here, but we're running out of time." Colonel Silver commanded, "Fire the missiles, flatten this town." The soldier on the radio came back once more, "Yes, sir." The tanks in the front of the Red Ribbon Army's platoon began firing at the mansion. Colonel Silver readied to lay siege to the village. Suddenly, a large man wearing an ox helmet came rushing out and began tackling some tanks over with his brute strength and large size. The man with the helmet then yelled out, "Who dares mess with the Ox King on his daughter's wedding day?" Colonel Silver clicks his tongue before yelling out, "Android 1, take this brutish beast down a few pegs." One of the androids jumped out of the travel van he was in and charged over to the Ox King, who was at the time throwing a tank around. The Ox King then said, "Who are you? Why are you attacking my village?" Android 1 stated, "Objective is to remove obstacles, the obstacle being you." Android 1 then threw a punch. The Ox King guarded against it, but was knocked back. The Ox King held onto his bicep that had just been hit by Android 1 and said, "Gosh, how can someone be this strong? We're almost identical in strength." The Colonel's army proceeded past the Ox King as the Ox King brought out his axe and said to Android 1, "You're going to pay for this." And that's where I will be leaving it for right now. What do you guys think? Android 1 is very robotic. He appears to lack emotions. He's the first one of his kind, of course. I wonder if he'll change in any sort of way. It's also fascinating to imagine what things were like in Gero's younger days. Either way, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Talk to you later.